Hey, Xanet, how you doing?
Good. How are you? I've got my love cards.
What? You've got your Love Smart cards? Me too. These are my
Okay,
demo
awesome.
boxes, but I took them out and I want to give you like a little tour through the box, okay? So
Great. That'd be
you just
great.
got your Love Smart cards, and if you just got your Love Smart cards and you don't know what to do with them and you're wondering how do I play, then I'm going to just walk you through it a little bit. So inside you'll see 4 different colored decks in what I call a set of Love Smart cards, okay?
Okay.
And this is all designed by Katrina Valancourt from California. And Katrina is an amazing artist and an incredible woman who wanted to design a tool to support herself and her son learning the skills of nonviolent communication. So I want to first tell you that we have 2 sets of cards that are about emotions. And we call them emotions instead of feelings, because feelings could be things that are sensations in our body. So emotions are the emotional body. And those two different decks are colored. One is sort of blue and one is sort of purpley gray. And you can see the awesome emoticon that Katrina designed. And so the emotions in this set are connected to fulfilled longings, and the emotions in this deck are connected to unfulfilled longings.
Okay,
And
so let me just take notes here.
yeah, you betcha. And so the basic principle in nonviolent communication is that we don't judge and use judgmental language for emotions. So emotions are neither good nor bad, positive, negative, right, wrong. Even we don't say desirable or undesirable. We might say pleasant or unpleasant or comfortable or uncomfortable, things like that. But these emotions, our emotions are just a sign of whether or not our needs are being met. So when needs are met, the emotions like this exist and are resulting. When needs are not met, emotions like this exist. And the emoticon says it all. I love her artwork. It's so descriptive. So first of all, 2 decks in the set are related to emotions. So I'll put those aside.
Okay.
The 3rd most important deck in the set, and the thickest one, is the longings. And the longings are universal human needs, longings, values, and desires. So universal human needs, longings, values, and desires speak to what is it that is important to all of us. And in fact, what nonviolent communication teaches is that we all share these qualities that motivate our behavior. And in fact, everything we're doing every day, all day long, is just an attempt to meet a precious need. So when these longings are fulfilled, we have those comfortable feelings that result. When those longings are not fulfilled, we have the uncomfortable feelings that result. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay. And so it's important to remember that every choice anyone, ourselves or others, ever makes is driven by a desire to meet one or more of our precious longings. And so on the cards, you'll see.
Let me just write that. Every choice.
Let's repeat it. So every choice that anyone ever makes is driven by the desire to meet one or more of these precious longings.
Okay. Got it.
So on the cards, the longings cards, if you fan them out, you'll see one word on each card. And it's actually written in 2 directions so that if you and I were sitting across the table from each other, we could both see, just like playing cards, we could both see and read the card. It would be facing us. The same is true for the emotions cards.
Got it.
So if you have a look at those, you'll notice there's just one word. And then inside the decks, you'll notice some starting sentence cards. And so
where are those?
They're inside the decks. So if you look inside the deck that says emotions connected to unfulfilled longings, for example, you'll find a card that says, I am feeling.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
And you'll also find a card that says, I'm guessing that you might be feeling.
Okay. And there's only one of those in each, is it in each section or just in the emotion section?
So in the emotions, you'll find an I am feeling and an I'm guessing you might be feeling. And in the longings, you'll find the sentence starter cards, and there are more than 2.
Okay.
So there will be a couple that say I am longing for or I am needing. And you'll also find one that says in the longings cards, okay, you'll find a card that says I am longing for, need, value, or desire. So we wouldn't say all of those words. We're guessing what somebody might be wanting, but we would choose one, so I'm guessing that you value honesty, for example. And, I might use that as a value in the conversation. We'll choose the one that most fits. There are also other starting sentences. So this is just going to be an intro to them. And what happens is I teach.
Wait, what about these cards at the end? We'll get to them. We'll get to them. Okay.
So what we're talking about today is just a quick, brief overview and an intro. I do lead workshops on this. We do virtual workshops and live workshops, both Katrina and I, and we also have an amazing facilitator in Japan who's working throughout Asia with even a Japanese version of the Love Smart cards, and they're currently also being translated into French. So it's a pretty big, awesome project. Yeah.
Awesome.
So the last deck is actually inspired from something called the Virtues Project, and these cards are called character strengths. And so they're the red on the one side and kind of pink on the other side. And the character strengths cards also have only one word on them that's facing 2 directions so that we could see it if we were sitting across the table from each other. And they also have guiding sentence or sentence starter stem cards within there as well. And so there's a lot that can be played with, whether you play with with yourself with the Love Star cards to work through something that's upsetting for you, or whether you work through something that's upsetting for you with another person. Or maybe you just have a friend who's really upset about something that doesn't even have anything to do with you, and you want to give them empathy and support them. You could use the Love Smart cards, the 2 of you together, to unpack and really help that person feel heard and seen and understood. And that's really the goal of all of it. The tool is just here to help us give quality empathy to others and to really learn how to use and access the language that isn't about preaching or teaching or advising or judging or psychoanalyzing, or a lot of things that we tend to lean on instead of empathy that are not actually empathy at all.
Makes sense.
Cool. So one more thing about the character strengths, and the reason that they're in here is, the way I like to explain it is that most of the time our character is built by our experiences, and our qualities of character are strengthened when tested. So think about patience. If you never had any opportunities to need to be patient, you wouldn't really grow in that area. You wouldn't develop, you wouldn't develop the skill or the ability, the strength, the quality of your character to be patient. And so when we're in a situation that we find difficult or challenging, a question that we can sometimes ask ourselves is, I wonder which of my character qualities is being tested and strengthened right now in this adverse situation. And we can also ask ourselves, I have some qualities in my character that I might be able to pull on right now. I might be able to draw upon. I might be inspired to bring to this challenge or this upset or this situation. So what would those qualities and characteristics be that I could? And then the other way I love to use the character strengths, and I know I'm going quickly, of course. My workshops are 2.5 hours each, and I have 4 modules. So if you can imagine that many hours worth of stuff, I'm almost covering. But those mutually beneficial characters and ways of being assist us through those challenging situations, and they empower us. And when we see others for who they are rather than what they do, we call that giving acknowledgments and appreciations. So when I think about my friendship with you, for example, something that I'd like to appreciate and acknowledge about you is how much in service you are to others, to supporting others. And so I see you do that when you spend time talking to me, and when you spend time talking to other friends and giving them, showing up with them and spending time with them to support them when they have an upset and they just want to be held, whether you hold space for a conversation or you put your arms around them and give them a hug. Mm-hmm. And so I want to acknowledge that quality that I see in you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do that with a card?
Yeah. So one of the cards says in service. And so I've got a lot of the cards memorized. Of course, when you work with them a lot, you increase your vocabulary, which is actually the purpose of the Love Smart cards, so that we don't always have to carry around a box of Love Smart cards with us. But when we grow our emotional intelligence and increase our vocabulary, then we'll be able to access this in times of need. What happens in triggered moments for people is sometimes we go a little nonverbal, and words fail us, and especially words to connect to our emotions, to describe how we're feeling. And so it can be really powerful to take the cards, and if I'm upset right now, I take the cards that are connected to unfulfilled longings, and I go through them. I hold them in my hand. I look at one card at a time. So the first one I have right here is overwhelmed, and I would ask myself a yes or no question. Am I feeling overwhelmed right now? Yes or no? Okay, well, overwhelmed is not actually describing. I'm thinking about, I had an upset yesterday. So I'm thinking about that upset, and I'm imagining that I took my cards out and I looked at them in that moment. Overwhelmed was not what I was feeling. Frustrated. No. So I put that in my no part. Impatient. No. Sad. Yes, I was feeling sad. I'm going to put that in my yes pile. Right? And so I would go through.
So this is an opportunity for people to start to maybe connect with emotions, different emotions, and to begin to be able to identify, this is the emotion that I'm feeling, or this is the emotion that I was feeling. It's difference between being frustrated versus being overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Right. It's definitely an opportunity, because I think that we sort of have a limited vocabulary when we describe how we're feeling. It's sort of mad, sad, glad. And we don't really discern, like you said, the difference between, am I angry or am I actually hurt?
Yeah, well, there's like the whole emotions wheel. So this is like the emotions wheel in a card base. It's part of it. It's like, this is the emotion wheel in a card based format. I like that. Yeah.
And the reason we use the cards is because when we're looking at them and making one decision at a time, it's not so overwhelming actually as a whole bunch of words on a wheel. And so one decision at a time. Am I feeling impatient? Yes or no? Am I feeling frustrated? Yes or no? Put them in two piles. And once I have, let's say I go through all of these cards, and let's say I have, this many no's and this many yeses. Okay, now let's look at my yeses. Let's lay them out and really look at them and really feel into them. Are these words really representing and resonating with me for what I am feeling now in this situation, or I was feeling in that situation when I was quite triggered and quite activated and upset, so that I can really put, really definitely make myself understand what is my emotional experience in this, what's happening for me, right? What's my emotional experience? So I would want to understand that. And then the next thing I would want to do is I would go through the universal longings cards, and I would ask myself, okay, what actually was missing for me? Like, what was I desiring or longing for in that situation that I wasn't getting, that left me feeling all these things? So then I can unpack behind the story, what are the feelings and what are the underlying needs? And so what Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote about nonviolent communication and invented nonviolent communication, what he said was, it's not, the story is the story. That's great. And then what are the feelings? And then underneath that, what are the needs that are being
not being met?
Feelings, right? And so then we can, because once we get to what are the needs, then we can sort of figure out actually how to maybe look at meeting those needs. And I notice in an upset with somebody, and this is deep work, but when I've unpacked really serious upsets with people, oftentimes we actually had the same need. And we were just going about meeting that need in such different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
so it speaks to that. It's the strategy that we're using to meet the need that becomes the source of conflict rather than the need, because nobody can argue with the needs. The needs are universal. It's like friendship, communication, play. Like these are all things that we desire, we want, we value, we need. No one's
Right.
say, oh, it's wrong and bad that you desire that. Like there's no conversation around that. Of course we have those needs. We all have many of them in different values at different times in our life. So it's really usually always about how are we going about meeting those needs. So
Mm-hmm.
that gives it a brief overview.
Okay.
And do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a sense of like what the practices are. That obviously you're not going to say that right now, but like, you know, I'm curious about like, what are the practices that you use with these cards in counseling with couples or working with an individual, or, you know, especially with couples. I think I understand a little bit with individuals, but yeah. So I'm assuming if you have 10 hours worth of stuff, then there's probably, you know, 20 different practices that you use. Is that true? Like, what do you cover? What do you cover in the class?
In the 4 modules that we have?
Yeah.
So the first module talks about what is empathy and what is not empathy, and it gives people an embodied experience of having non-empathic responses given to them repeatedly, and then having an experience of receiving empathy, quality empathy. And all my workshops are very hands-on experiential, so people get to really have the practice and feel it in their body. What's the sensation of that? And in the second one, I take them through and guide them through a 7-step process for unpacking an upset and a difficult situation that they've had with someone. And they use the Love Smart cards to really dig into what's really underlying this situation. That's the most potent and most what's charged around this situation, so that they can start to really understand it and possibly even go to that other person to begin to unpack it and manage that conflict. And the third one, we really teach people the difference between evaluations and observations. So a lot of times when we tell our story, it's full of evaluation and judgment. And what nonviolent communication leads us toward is, let's tell the story with just observations. And how do we tease that out? Like, what is just an observation? And also with that, we talk about what are evaluations that are masquerading as feelings. Like, for example, if I said to you, I feel criticized, that's actually a judgment masquerading as a feeling. And I could tell you that there are lots of feelings that come up for me when I judge that I'm being criticized. You know, when I think I'm criticized, I feel self-protective, defensive, you know, etc. Right?
Right.
So when so we help people decipher that. And in the 4th module, we really move into how to make empowered requests and what's the difference between a request and a demand. Because that's tricky for people, really tricky.
So do you teach people how to like do this as well, I guess if you're having an upset with somebody, then you're teaching somebody how to like work with 2 people at once.
Yeah. And when I do sessions with couples, like what you can't see that's in front of me right now is a big long dining room table, and I have them sit across from each other, and I have them each have their own box of Love Smart cards, and they'll talk about something that happened. You know, they'll give me a situation that happened recently that they want to unpack, and I'll have them work with the feelings cards, and they'll each do it, and they'll go through their yeses and nos, and they'll each have a big pile of yeses, and then I'll have them express how they were feeling and compare them to each other. Like, and they'll push their cards and move them around on the table. And what we know from scientific research is that categorizing, manipulating, labeling, organizing, sorting, these kinds of behaviors are very soothing for people with PTSD and ADHD, and just generally in upset situations where we pretty much almost always feel out of control. gives us a sense of control again, that we're able to have ownership of our feelings. We can put words to them. We can understand ourselves. We begin to feel calmed and self-soothed just from that very action of being able to identify. And it depends on the situation. So this example I gave you, this one process where they would compare, and they're always amazed to see, oh my goodness, we're both feeling a lot of the same stuff. Or if it's just one person who's really upset and not the other, then maybe that person does what they're feeling and the other person does guessing what the other might be feeling. And then they get to see how much of it is accurate. How does it compare? The one who's really upset goes, whoa, my partner really realizes actually how I was actually feeling. And that's powerful and healing as well. And then of course, never forgetting to go to the needs. What are the needs that are associated with these feelings? Because the feelings are only an expression of the underlying longings and desires, right? And the same is true when I'm looking to create, and I call it relationship alchemy, some kind of magic in a relationship. Like, we can focus on, when times are good, what important needs are met with this relationship. So when we talk, if we only talk about things that are not positive about the relationship and only about the conflict, we're overemphasizing one aspect of the relationship, really, because lots of times needs are met. And what does that feel like? And so let's not be deficit focused. Let's also have a balanced perspective. And then a really powerful exercise I do, even though I use the Gottman Method, which, by the way, includes acknowledgements, empathy, understanding the other person's feelings and needs in a situation. Like, they have all processes that go toward this. I use the cards to support me rather than words lists. I find that people are easily able to manage one decision at a time, one card at a time, rather than a whole list of words that can be very overwhelming, can be too much. And another practice with the Gottmans is I think they call them appreciations, and I call them acknowledgements, what I did with you. So looking at the character strength cards, if I give a set of these cards to each party in the couple, let's say I have 2 boxes of Love Smart cards, which I do. I have lots of boxes open for demo. And so if I give this to the couple and I say, to Susie, will you go through and pull out everything that you appreciate about your partner, every single card that you appreciate about your partner. And Billy, will you do that for Susie? And then they share them and they say, the strength I see in you is, and they lay it all out. It blows them away to see, to feel seen by their partner, to know that their partner really appreciates and knows them the way that they do. And of course,
it's a little bit different than, I do a lot of, giving each other acknowledgments and appreciations. I do a lot of exercises around that. But it's a little bit different when you actually have like some choices of words and things, like, as opposed to, I appreciate how you always show up for the children, but like, I appreciate your compassion, like really trying to get people to connect to that. Yeah.
So here's what I would say that it would enrich in your practice. I appreciate the way you really show up for the children, acknowledges something the person did. What character quality is exemplified in that behavior? Devotion, commitment, caring, love. Like, what is it about that person in their quality? What character quality is being shown in the example of, I like the way you show up for the children. Like, you are there every morning when they go to school and every night when they come home. You go to all their basketball games. You take them to all of their dance practices and recitals. What does that show about that person that he or she does that? That's the
So a question I have for you in terms of how you use this is, because I think you use a pretty somatic approach. And when I'm working with like couples, I'm using a very somatic approach. I'm having them doing various exercises and like feeling into their emotions and whatnot. So I'm assuming that like this would be like a session. Like, I wouldn't transform my practice to just be working on this, but I can see how like, I don't know, like I'm a little bit curious about how you integrate this into like, counseling, right? Because like I feel like what I do generally works. This is an area where I need more support in, so I'm really appreciative of, this in terms of helping couples try to see some stuff. But yeah, so I'm kind of curious about like how much you rely on this. That's really the question, versus how much do you bring other stuff in?
I think, you have to find your own way and do what feels right for you. I find that anytime somebody needs the vocabulary and doesn't have it, then this set of one of these sets of cards is going to be a powerful tool. Anytime I need to dramatically shift the energy, because if somebody is all up in their head, then I can give them the set of cards, and it somehow clears it and takes them away from a lot of analytical work or whatever that's going on for them. Or if they're really resistant, people who don't want to talk about stuff, they will go through a set of cards and just make yes or no decisions, and they will lay down the cards and say, I'm feeling sensitive and nervous and hesitant and uncomfortable. They'll lay those out and just say the words, right? And that's all that's being asked. So it can really break it down if there's a gridlock or a real, that kind of thing. And then it can dramatically shift the energy within the couple, because when I do something magical, like acknowledging each other's character qualities, it just changes the energy between them remarkably. And it does it in such an authentic and rich way. And what people are really, it's the peace too. It's not just saying, I appreciate you for doing whatever, because that's what a lot of therapists teach. Like, why don't you say thanks for dinner, honey? That was great that, you made a yummy meal. But what does it say about the person's person? What does it say about the person that they made that meal, and that they showed up, and that they sat with you, and that they shared it? So I guess,
and I totally get all this. I'm just like, I'm trying to process this myself. Yeah. So I'm like thinking of these couples that I work with. So I think I have like maybe a little bit of a different way in which I like look at, and you call it an upset, but I look at some sort of conflict. And, and maybe this is like my somatica Hakomi kind of approach to it, which is, there's something that happened that triggered them, but I'm always curious about like getting to like them to understand that when people are triggered, right, it's like it's a child that's showing up in the wound, in the room. And also like I spend a lot of time helping people understand what those core wounds are. And where they're coming, we want to hear where they're coming from, but what those core wounds are, and how you can help support your partner to in that space of feeling those core wounds, right? And so like it's like so like when I start thinking about some of this, I'm like, yeah, but I'm not sure like I can understand how to integrate it. Blah, blah, blah. It's interesting, right? Like this is just my own like therapist sort of mind of, I definitely see the value for this. I could see that they would be useful for me, and I would get concerned that we'd get so involved in this piece of it that we wouldn't really get to the underlying, but the child is showing up in the room here. And, what really needs to happen in this moment is blah, blah, blah kind of thing. I don't know. So I'm just like processing this with you, this is my own thoughts.
Yeah. So, I think that it's great to go there, and the Gottmans have one of their exercises that they rely heavily on in their process or methodology is called the aftermath of a fight or regrettable incident. And the aftermath of a fight or regrettable incident follows specific steps. And one of the steps is figuring out what we're feeling and what we were needing. And I don't have any idea how most people would be able to do that task without some vocabulary. And if they're still upset about it, and they may still be carrying anger, even though that happened earlier in the week and they're in your office on a Wednesday.
Well, I'll tell you how you do it, because I'll tell you exactly how you do it, because in the Hakomi method, for example, you're prompting, right? So you say to somebody, you would say I might say and we always do it this way, let's see, feeling, so something happened. I'm like, so yes, we're feeling a little angry, huh? And then they're like, oh, yeah, maybe it's not anger. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, yeah. So we're more attuning to what's going on and giving suggestions of what the emotions are. And then the client can say, no, it's not really anger. It's more like I'm feeling disappointment kind of thing. But so there are other ways to do it where you're more somatically helping them to connect. So there are other ways to do it. I just want to say that. Like, I'm just like, how do I do that? That's how I do it. Like, I'm in tuning to what's going on, feeling the energy that I'm seeing between them. And I'm like, wow, like, you know, sounds like maybe a little disappointed there, or feeling a little dismissed, right? Like, giving some clues to the emotions that are going on. So I think that's
so I think it's worth saying a couple of things. Like, first of all, that the Gottman method is unique in that it's a dyadic approach rather than triadic. So a lot of the psychotherapists in the room during the training had to make a big shift with this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the Gottmans are psychotherapists, so they come from a background of that. So the triadic approach is where, I mean, essentially what happens in that example that you gave me is you're the one giving the empathy. You're giving the empathy by saying, sounds like you were angry. And the person goes, no, I think it was more maybe frustrated. But you're giving the empathy. They're not giving each other empathy. And so,
well, we get there, right? So I might say, like, to him, like, wow, when he just said that, what does that make you feel, right? So like, definitely the goal is to get to empathy, right? There's definitely,
right.
I don't know that I'm giving empathy. It's more like I'm trying to attune to what's going on.
But you attuning with them makes you in the triangle. And so that's
part of that is the relationship. Yeah.
That's the therapeutic relationship. So the Gottmans don't agree with that. The Gottmans, they are categorically opposed to a triadic relationship in therapy of couples, period. So they are all about that. All the therapist does is help the couple talk to each other. So I clearly, when I'm watching them, can see the emotions that are arising and what the underlying needs are. I can absolutely see that. But it's not my job to give them empathy or to identify them, because then I'm in their relationship with them. That's what the Gottmans believe. And
I see. Okay.
So the tool for me is like, how can the person figure out their own emotions? What tool can I give them to support them without me giving them the vocabulary? How can I support them to figure out their own feelings and needs? And also, how can they figure out their partner's feelings and needs? So how can they attune to their partner? I am not in triad with them. I'm out of the picture. So it's a different approach, which is really comfortable for me, because with my background in coaching, I'm not wanting to be in it with them either.
Right. And I can see that in Somatica, they don't use that approach. No, right, because I've trained in a lot of different things, right? So you have to sort of like part and parcel up. Yeah. In Somatica, it would be more like, we do the I feel game. This is totally nonviolent communication. When you said that, I feel blank. When you said, you feel sad, that makes me feel, right? So it is definitely helping couples come to communicating more of a dyadic.
Right.
Piece. It's interesting. And Hakomi's a little bit different. Hakomi, the therapist, is more a little more centered in it. Yeah, I didn't actually realize that until you just said that to me.
So that's like day one Gottman training is they spend, I don't know how much time on that, but a significant amount of time, because it's a big mind shift for anyone who's come from a clinical psychology background, where the is so involved with the couple or the person. And so in their version of couples therapy, based on their 40 years of research and their 3,000 plus couples, and the way that they've developed these methods, and it's called the Gottman Method, they say that, in fact, if you take their level 3 and do the certification, and you submit your videos and you do your live interpretation, if you become triadic with the couple, you fail, period. One time you fail. They say, please come back next time, try again. It's because they do not believe in that approach. So it was like, that is one of the core principles of the approach. So what I find about this is, because my background of experience in education is in education, and then my coaching training is about empowering the other with the skills. So I need them to get good at figuring out the language that describes their feelings and their needs, and to understand the connection between them, and for them to feel in control of having sorted that without me, not dependent upon me to feed them
Right.
some language or some words, so that when I'm not with them, they're doing it on their own.
Right. That makes sense.
Or with
Yeah.
memory, right? And
Yeah.
then also so that they're doing it for the other partner. So
Mhm.
I give them examples, we give them examples of how we've used the cards in our upsets, and how they can begin to use their language. Inside the quick start guide, which is in the box, and it's pushed down into the inside of this box right now, but
Okay.
the quick start guide has tips for games you can play, working with kids, working with each other. You know, we can change the way people start to think about
Where is that?
their days and their lives. It's in the front. So
I don't see anything.
so you pulled that out. Take the
Is it a
paper.
card?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Take this thing off.
Yeah. So is there a wrapper?
Yeah. Here's the wrapper.
Take the wrapper away. Then there'll be more room in there. And then go ahead with, there should be a little manual. I'll show you what it looks like.
No, I don't actually see it.
It looks something like this.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah, I got it.
So when you open it up,
this one, Love Smart Guides. Yeah, I got it.
that's it. So when you open it up, you'll see some ideas and suggestions there for your, guiding you through processes that you can use and so on. And there's a lot of information in there. So, please read through that and see if there's something. I mean, obviously, you're going to figure out as the therapist how to use these yourself in your own practice. And I think that the point that I made about the triadic versus dyadic therapeutic
it's helpful.
is a big, big difference.
Yeah. I think that is a big, big difference.